I have a strange question about Matthew chapter 12. What were the Pharisees doing in a Galilean wheat field on the Sabbath? Jesus and his disciples, they were out walking through the grain. The disciples get hungry. They reach out, they pluck a few heads of grain, and they eat. And yet somehow someone was watching. That may be the most revealing part of this entire story. The Sabbath was supposed to be free from people working, yes, yet religious leaders were spending it monitoring everyone else's rest. When I considered this element of the story, it left me with this burning question. What kind of anxiety does that? What makes someone unable to receive the gift because they were too busy policing how someone else receives the gift of the Sabbath? And what happens after you live, and along with that, what happens after you live under that sort of system long enough? Eventually, you're going to start watching yourself for them. Now, Matthew does not say that the Pharisees were hiding in the stalks of wheat by any means. Maybe they had just been following Jesus. Maybe Matthew compressed the scene to sharpen the conflict. We can't reconstruct every detail, but Matthew wants us to notice the atmosphere. Someone is always watching. An ordinary act becomes evidence. Hunger becomes suspicion. And Jesus is expected to answer for his disciples' behavior. To understand why, we have to enter into their world. The Sabbath was more than just a personal spiritual practice. It marked the Jewish identity under foreign occupation. Sabbath, circumcision, food practices, festivals, and Torah study helped answer that basic question. Who are we while Romans rule over our land? These practices protected the community that had already experienced conquest and exile and pressure to assimilate. So let's be fair to the Pharisees. They did not wake up wanting to ruin everyone else's weekend. They cared about faithfulness because faithfulness mattered. But I want to propose that communal anxiety had just taken hold over that entire region. Israel's scriptures connected national unfaithfulness with exile and occupation, and now they're living under Roman rule. God's complete restoration had not yet arrived, even though they had come back to the land, even though they had built the temple. So a dangerous logic could begin with that form. Maybe we're still oppressed because Israel, as a collective nation, has not been faithful enough. Maybe God will restore us once everyone becomes obedient. And if our restoration depends on everyone else's obedience, your imperfect Sabbath becomes my emergency. That's the moment that conviction turns into a surveillance state. I no longer help you become faithful. I monitor you because I need your behavior to calm my fear. Your freedom is dangerous to me. Your different interpretation feels like a threat. Your handful of grain feels like one more reason that God may delay the kingdom. You see how quickly that happens? The person in front of me disappears. I stop seeing hunger and I see a violation. And then Jesus walks into the synagogue and there's a man with a withered hand. Once again, the religious leaders are watching. Matthew says they ask whether healing is lawful on the Sabbath so that they can accuse Jesus. Think about that. A human being's suffering has become a test case. The man standing there with this body that needs restoration, but the system sees this as an opportunity to collect evidence and turn it into a case against someone who doesn't fit into their box. Religious anxiety does that. It turns people into cases for the prosecution. Jesus returns that case back to humanity, back to personhood. He gives that person dignity. He tells the man, stretch out your hand, and the hand is restored. That healing should have settled the argument. Think about that. If you saw someone else's hand miraculously heal, what would be your reaction? If God restores someone through Jesus on the Sabbath, then restoration belongs on the Sabbath. But Matthew says the Pharisees leave and begin to plan how to destroy Jesus. They object to the healing, and then they plan out harm, the opposite of healing. They defend the day of restoration while resisting the person who's being restored. That is the warning. A religious system can become so committed to protecting its definition of faithfulness that it attacks the fruit of what faithfulness was supposed to produce. This is why Matthew places the story where he does. At the end of chapter 11, Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are laboring and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Then he says, "Take my yoke on you." Now, a yoke was more than just a piece of farm equipment in that day. It could describe the teaching and interpretive framework that a disciple agreed to carry. Jesus offers a way of learning the Torah that leads towards rest, that leads towards restoration. Then Matthew immediately shows us the competing yoke, the yoke of the religious leaders. Under that yoke, hungry people are accused. A suffering person becomes bait, and everyone must remain alert because there's always someone watching. That's a heavy burden. The burden is bigger than a long list of rules. It's an exhausting experience of living under constant evaluation. Religious communities can reproduce this experience today, by the way. At first, another person watches you. A parent corrects you. A teacher warns you. Someone at your church asks you, "What did you do during the Sabbath?" A religious expert explains why your rest didn't count, why you were actually working. Eventually, they don't even need to be in the room. Their voice has moved inside of your head. You sit down and the questions begin. Should I be doing something more spiritual? Is this activity restful enough? Am I wasting my sacred time of the Sabbath? Is what I'm doing, does it count as work? Have I earned the right to even take a nap? Would God be more pleased if I read scripture instead? What would they think if they saw me? You have stopped working with your hands, but your mind has started auditing your rest. You've become your own Sabbath taskmaster. And by the way, this connects to something psychologists refer to as attention restoration theory. Your directed attention, what you focus on, gets tired. It's that attention that you use to plan, to decide, to focus, to ignore distractions, to monitor your behavior. Restorative experiences give that system room to recover. But self-surveillance uses that same attention you're trying to restore. You cannot recover from constant evaluation while you are evaluating yourself constantly. You can't become psychologically away and resting while that inspector is with you. And that's why a person can follow every visible rule for the Sabbath and still finish the day exhausted. The body stopped, but the taskmaster did not. And I wonder if this is part of what Jesus is confronting. He refuses to let anxious interpreters turn the Sabbath into a courtroom. He refuses to let hunger become evidence. He refuses to let a suffering person become a theological prop. He restores the person and exposes the system. His yoke is light because his teachings move people towards life. It changes the environment in which faithfulness is learned. Accusation gives way to discipleship. Constant inspection gives way to imitation. And fear gives way to trust. So here's the question I want you to carry this week. Whose eyes are you still resting under? Who taught you that rest has to be justified? Whose disappointment do you imagine when you stop being useful? And what would Sabbath feel like if nobody was grading it? I want you to try one experiment this week. Take 20 minutes this week and choose something that genuinely is restorative. Sit outside, walk without listening to audio, pray quietly, lie down, do something that asks nothing of you. And when that internal taskmaster begins talking, don't argue with it. Just name the voice. That's the voice that taught me that rest must be earned. And then ask a better question. What if God is giving me rest instead of inspecting it? That experiment cost you 20 minutes. For some of us, it cost an uncomfortable feeling of disappointing that imaginary audience, that imaginary taskmaster. But that may be where Jesus' invitation begins. Come to me, all who are weary. Come while you are weary. Come while you're being watched. Come carrying that taskmaster inside of your head and learn a lighter yoke. I'm going to go much deeper into the history, that ancient first century anxiety, and Matthew's literary design in a companion Substack article that will be posted soon. You can find the link in the description below to my Substack, so you can check that out when it's released. And if you want more teachings that connect the ancient world of Scripture to the patterns that are shaping us today, I'd invite you to join my newsletter at faithofmessiah.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.